Why should I study Hebrew? I'd say that's a question that many people ask, except I don't actually think that's true. I think it's more commonly the case that people don't ask that question because they've already made up their mind. There is no reason I should learn Hebrew, or there's no way that I could learn Hebrew. If that's what you're thinking, I'd like to change your mind. Before doing that, it's important to say that there are obviously many men and women who have never studied Greek or Hebrew, or who have forgotten the Greek or Hebrew they had once studied, who are nevertheless faithful servants of the Lord, through whom the Lord has done great things. That's obviously true, and I want to recognize that. I should also say that it's possible to do a BTH at ETS without doing the biblical languages, so I want to be clear about that. Nevertheless, I'd like to try to change your mind. I'd like you to think, maybe I should study Hebrew. So, with regard to the last point, whether or not learning Hebrew is a realistic goal, I would say that Hebrew is one of my favorite subjects to teach, and one of the reasons for that is because students are often surprised at how well they do. We English speakers have to admit that we're not great at learning other languages. We view it as an impossible task. But in fact, many students find it's entirely possible to achieve a respectable proficiency in Hebrew. That's not to say we become fluent speakers. It's not to deny that it requires a lot of hard work and perseverance. But it is possible to gain a sufficient level to use it meaningfully in interpreting the Bible. As to why you should put in that hard work, I would say two things. First, you can interpret God's Word with greater accuracy if you can read it in the original. I'll give you an example. In class, I was recently looking at Isaiah 42 with my students. Here's my servant whom I uphold, my chosen one in whom I delight. One question that comes up with that passage is the Ethiopian eunuch's question. Who is the prophet talking about? It's common today for commentators to say that Isaiah is speaking primarily about Israel, and that when the New Testament writers apply the passage to Jesus, they're doing so typologically, indirectly. That's not a terrible interpretation, but I don't think it's the correct one. A compelling argument can be made based on the Hebrew text that Isaiah is speaking not about the whole nation, but about an individual who will come. He's talking about Jesus. As you can imagine, it's difficult to enter into that debate if you don't have Hebrew. There are many examples like that. The Reformation happened because people started reading the Bible in the original languages, and as a result, God gave them a clearer understanding of the gospel. The second reason is that you can preach God's word with greater confidence if you can read it in the original. As another example, I was recently reading Exodus chapter 3 with the Hebrew class. They'd been studying Hebrew for about 6 months, and they were able, with help, to read Exodus 3. That's a significant passage, right? God reveals his name to Moses. I am who I am. And then I preached on that passage last Sunday. And as I was able to do so with greater confidence because I'd read it in the original. I wasn't solely reliant on commentaries. We should use commentaries, we should be aware of what they're saying, but we should also interact directly with the text itself. And that gives us greater confidence when we preach God's word. So I'd like you to consider that just maybe you should try learning Hebrew. It enables us to interpret God's word with greater accuracy, and it enables us to preach God's word with greater confidence.